am going to be making some dinner rolls tonight, and I've already got my yeast proofed here. I'm kind of doing a recipe out of this cookbook here on page 164 called the Rich and Tender Dinner Rolls. I'm also going to be making some pepperoni rolls out of some of these simply because I want some. Recipe calls for 1.5 cups of warm water, 3 to 4 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon or packet of active dry yeast, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil or butter, 1 large egg, 1/2 to 1 cup of King Arthur stone ground whole wheat flour, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1/2 cup of non-fat dry milk optional, 4.5 to 5 cups of King Arthur unbleached all-purpose flour. Okay, here's where I'm making some changes. I don't have any whole wheat flour, so I'm just going to use all bread flour in this. Right now I've got that off to the side. Right now, like I said, I've got my water and yeast and have let that proof. And sugar in there. I used about 3.5 tablespoons of sugar in it. So we are now ready to beat in the butter, which I've melted a 1/4 stick of, or yeah, 1/2 stick of butter. So that would be 1/4 cup. And let's see, all that out of there. And it wants me to add the butter and the eggs after I've activated the yeast, which as you can see is good and frothy. Okay, don't fall in there. Okay, there's my egg. Make a mess, beat that in. And I made sure my butter that I melted it in the microwave was not over 110 degrees before adding it in here. In fact, it probably cooled down even a little bit more since I checked the temperature on it. Okay, so now that I've done that, it wants me to add the salt and dry milk in with the whole wheat flour. Well, like I said, I'm not doing the whole wheat flour, so we're going to do 1 cup of the regular flour first. Let's see. That's about 1 cup. Start stirring that in. I didn't use a whole tablespoon of salt either. That was an awful lot of salt in my opinion. So I used about 1/2 tablespoon. It might have been fine with all the flour we're doing, but okay, nice and lumpy. Let's see. It says to make these dinner rolls softer, it's best to use the lesser amount of flour. So, okay, it also keeps referring you to another recipe on. So let me see what that says. Okay, measured the flour. Okay, so basically it's ready for me to add the rest of the flour. I kind of figured as much. Got another cup in there. Stir that around. Hopefully I'm not getting too far out of the frame. And while I add this flour, I'm going to just speed up this video. Okay, this dough has just about gotten to where I want it. It's still a little sticky, but not terribly sticky. And I don't want to add more flour than necessary. this point though, I think I would be better off to start working this out on my counter. Okay, it wants me to knead it for 3 to 4 minutes, which I've kind of already been doing that in the bowl, but I'm going to activate that gluten in there, and I still have quite a bit of flour left over from what the recipe says, but I don't want it to be dry. So I mean, that's still stuck from my finger from earlier, but that's already starting to come together pretty good. It's at a consistency that, I guess you can see that when I punch it, it's coming back, and that's what you want in bread dough. So I think I'm gonna call it quits on adding flour at this point, other than to keep some underneath there. The pepperoni rolls, I've had a hankering for those. It was something a childhood friend's mother used to make. It was an Italian family, and she always had pepperoni rolls there. I think she used frozen bread dough when she made hers, but since I was going to go ahead and make dinner rolls to go with our beef stroganoff tonight, I just thought I would go ahead. I had some pepperoni on hand. I got some mozzarella cheese. Okay, we're just going to kind of shape that into a ball. Neaten it up a little bit. Okay. There we go. Alright, now I'm going to wash this bowl out. I'm going to turn you off here for a minute while I do that, and get it greased up so we can get that put in there and covered and rising. Got my bowl washed out. I'm just going to give this bowl, and I dried it, kind of dried it. Let's dry that a little bit. I'm going to spray it with some coconut oil. I need to get some spray olive oil, I guess. And we're just gonna plop that down in there like so. I'm gonna give the top a little spray with some oil, and we're gonna set this up in our laundry room over here to dry. I have to say I've probably got maybe a cup or a cup and a half of flour left over. I might should have added it. I guess we're gonna find out. So anyway, after this is risen up and we're ready to punch it down and start shaping things into rolls, we'll be back. Okay, our dough's risen for an hour now. So I am going to punch this down, knock that air out of it. Had a nice rise to it. This recipe is actually wanting me to do a double rise on this before shaping it. Well, I want to eat sometime tonight, especially since there's going to be a chat that I want to attend on YouTube. So we're going to move things along. I'm going to put down a little flour here and kind of knead this back out a little bit. I didn't put a lot of flour down, but we want to make sure we work all that air out of it without adding too much flour back into it. And once I do this, I'm going to let it rest for a few minutes again before I start cutting this and shaping it into rolls. So, and plus I've got to get my pepperoni and my mozzarella cheese out, because I'm going to do at least part of these as the pepperoni rolls that I have been wanting for some time. So, alright, so we're going to let that sit for a few minutes and get the other stuff ready, and we'll be right back. Okay, I've let my dough rest for about 5 minutes now. I've got a greased pan over here. I just sprayed it with some Pam. So I'm going to kind of split this in two as best I can. And we're going to sway this. Got my scale over here. We're going to turn it on. Zero out for me. Thank you. Okay, you can't see that, but let's see. Alright, instead of making you sit here and watch me weigh each one of these, I'm going to put you on pause and get this finished, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, I finally got all this dough divided up into rolls about the size I like them. They're each about 2.5 to almost 3 ounces each. I've already done a couple of pepperoni rolls. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever attempted this. So I'm just taking a little bit of shredded mozzarella cheese and a couple of slices of pepperoni, and I'm sticking them in there and trying to keep all the cheese together, kind of flatten the roll out, the dough out I should say. And I'm just kind of rolling this up into a ball and tucking under as I go. So it's not going to look very pretty on the bottom. See? But I'm going to try to pinch that together to keep the cheese from oozing out. But there we go. So I'm probably going to space these out a little bit better. So I'm only going to do about 4 of these. My husband doesn't like pepperoni. Surprise, surprise. So he's not going to want to eat these. So they'll be all mine. So just do me a few of them and see how I like this. This may not be the exact bread recipe I want to use for this. So we might have to keep looking. I have some printed recipes that I just decided to go ahead, since I wanted to make dinner rolls too, to just incorporate the pepperoni and cheese into what I was already doing. So, okay, on the rest of these, I'm just going to shape them into a ball, tucking under as I roll. That one's not wanting to cooperate too well. Kind of seems to do a little better when I've got the cheese and pepperoni in them. Well, that's good enough. Let's see my... Scoot that over a little more. Pepperoni out of the way now. So just kind of roll and tuck. I may be overworking my dough a little bit here, but okay. Alright, I can see right now I'm going to have to pull another pan out since I'm going to leave these spaced out a little bit. So once I get these ready to go in the oven, I will bring you back. Okay. Ended up doing a few more pepperoni rolls. Decided since I was getting so many to break it up into 2 pans. It's going to get a little crowded in here on these, but that's okay. I'm going to let these rise for another 30 minutes before I stick them in the oven. I'm probably going to brush them with a little bit of butter before I put them in there too. Rolls have risen up pretty nicely. That was my timer on them. So I preheated my oven to 400 degrees. Well, now it's not quite done preheating, but should be here in a minute. So we're going to put them in. I'm going to wait and brush the butter on maybe after they've cooked for 5 or 10 minutes. There. Now we're done preheating. So anyway, we'll bring you back. These are supposed to cook for 15 to 20 minutes, so I'll probably check them in 10 minutes. Put some butter on the tops of them and put them back in for a few minutes. And we'll show you our finished product. And I'm going to finish cooking dinner. Okay, these look about done to me, but this has only been 10 minutes in the oven, and I actually turned my oven down to 375 because it tends to run a little hot. So I'm going to do this version of rubbing the top of the rolls with butter. And I'm sorry I've gotten kind of crowded. I had to get the rest of dinner going. Now these in the smaller pan are the pepperoni rolls, and these over here are the plain dinner rolls. And these are already about to the stage we like them, but I'm gonna imagine they're really not done on the inside yet. So we're gonna put them back in here for another 5 minutes and we'll be back. Hey y'all. Turns out I lost all the footage on this roll experiment that I was doing, so I'm just gonna have to kind of describe to you, because I did have footage shot of me buttering one up or breaking one open and eating it and giving it a try. They rose up beautifully, which you could probably tell from the footage of when I was putting the butter on top of them. They had a really nice crumb to them, but they were lacking in flavor for us. So we tend to like a little bit of a sweeter roll, and this just didn't have what we were looking for. So I'm going to consider this one just a so-so, not a complete fail, since they did rise up and, you know, cooked wonderfully. Just not going to cut it for us flavor-wise, though. So I'll keep trying. I'll probably title this as Pepperoni Roll Experimental Recipe 1, and we'll keep trying. So I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'll answer you as soon as I possibly can. And happy cooking!